Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Life Unfiltered with me. I am so committed this year to helping organizations and individuals unlock the next level. And I truly believe that the only way to unlock exponential growth and momentum is through taking control of what we think about and how we think about ourselves. There is a verse in the Bible, Romans 12 verse 2, that says, "Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what is the good and acceptable will of God." And that verse is just my verse for the year, right? It's been something I've built my life and identity around, is this transforming our thinking, and that people who seek to constantly test what they are thinking about and challenge that and grow that and stretch that, those are the individuals and organizations that truly transcend just ordinary performance. And I have taken that, and together with a counterpart, we have decided that our theme for women leaders specifically this year is unleash your thinking and amplify your impact. It all starts with mindset. I have built online education businesses. I've worked in tertiary education in obviously a marketing capacity. I have trained countless of sales experts from all levels and all industries. And the one thing that I have come to really truly realize is that none of that will take root if our sense of identity and if our worthiness is not solid. And there is such a wrestle here, because people who do not necessarily have a great level of self-awareness, and guys, we're all in different spaces and different stages of our lives, so I get it. But when we don't have self-awareness, or we're not reflecting, often we think that our identity is fixed and our worthiness is fixed, and the things we say to and about ourselves are just things we have to learn to accept. And that's just not true. I mean, from a neuroscience point of view, science has proven that the brain is malleable, right? That it can be rewired, that new neural pathways can be formed. Like, from a scientific point of view, your brain is not fixed. It's not fixed or, I want to say static. Is that the right word? I don't know. No, anyway, it's not fixed in a moment of time. It is able to grow and develop, but it has to be done on purpose. Self-awareness, consciousness, growth, none of that stuff happens by accident. And I think one of the tricks of the universe is to create environments where we think that we just are who we are, and this is just life, and we have to accept it. That's not real by any sense of the imagination. If I 5 years ago or 10 years ago had accepted that my patterns of thinking were what they were, and I couldn't change them, my life wouldn't be my life wouldn't reflect a different story today. I can't, I'll get into my personal testimony with you guys one day. That's not today. But the reality is, I don't even recognize the human being I was 5 or 10 years ago. I don't even recognize her anymore. I don't think the way she does. I don't reason the way. I can't even try to relate to how she thought. She just doesn't exist anymore. And that didn't happen just because. Like, I contended to reframe the way I saw myself, to reframe the way I saw myself through God's word, because ultimately I'm unapologetically Christian. So contending for that recalibration, for a revelation of my character through his eyes, that has transformed my thinking and so my world. And now I can walk out a different testimony and share that with the world. And I just look at how I'm dealing with executives that come from a place of fear when negotiating just everyday stuff at a senior manager or an executive level. Don't think that you're alone, guys. Don't think that you are the only person that is struggling with identity, struggling with boundaries, struggling to speak your truth, afraid that saying, if you firmly believe Project A is going to change the business, but you feel like you can't say it because will be consequences because you operate in an environment. You are not alone in that world. You're not alone in that thinking. However, that you are there is your choice. And I know that people are going to be kicking against this and resisting because it's so uncomfortable to go from a place of accepting that you just are who you are versus contending for who you want to be and recalibrating your inner narrative and recalibrating your sense of worth, recalibrating your sense of identity, and then contending for that future version of yourself. When I was at my worst, I had to sit back and reflect around who it was I wanted to be. What meaning did I want to bring to this world? And who did I want to be? And then I had to decide how that future version of me would act and behave and engage with the universe. And I had to step out of some seriously habitual patterns that were absolutely self-sabotaging from a thinking point of view first, and then start to act that out so that I could eventually, create and build, and I hate the word manifest, but manifest that future version of me, right? The only way that I've known, and I say this all the time to you guys, right? The only way I know to change your thinking is to start acting out a different way. Because the more you build that track record of new evidence for yourself, the more it starts to rewire the way you think, and it starts to rewire your identity. And so this one example is of this executive. She has been struggling to speak her truth in an organization. You guys can walk with me. She's been struggling to speak her truth in this organization just because she comes from a very political background, or the environment in which she exists is extremely politically charged, and there's so many nuances and all of that kind of stuff. And she's such a high performance individual. But even at that level, because of this fear of rejection or fear of failure or sense of not being worthy enough to contend for a certain project or a certain boundary in her role, doesn't speak her truth, and then carries the resentment and the toxicity of unvoiced concern inside. And I can't tell you how self-sabotaging that behavior is. 9 times out of 10, if you have invested in your ability to communicate and articulate your ask effectively and in a way that is met well, you are more likely to succeed when speaking your truth and drawing your boundaries and laying forth your concern around your organization or your relationship. Then you serve yourself by not speaking your truth. It is so disempowering. I almost want to say, if I can give you a picture, every time we compromise on our integrity, every time we compromise on the future versions of ourselves, every time we submit to the negative internal narrative or the fears, we chisel away at our usness. And it's like every time you don't say no, every time you don't speak your truth, every time you choose to be quiet when you know that there is a project that would serve the business and you're just too afraid to stand true, it's like you're cutting off a little part of yourself. And when we do that for long enough, and I'm coming from a place of knowing, when we do that for long enough, we wake up one day and we cannot recognize our lives. And so I think that that's the most extreme version, right? Is if you're not content or you're not happy and you're in that space where you feel like you are not strong enough to articulate your boundaries or speak your truth. I mean, that's the extreme. Then there are individuals that I'm working with that are at the top of their game, that do speak their truth, that are able to have conversations around boundaries. However, do that in the safety of their role and are afraid of stepping outside and tapping into what they want for their future. And so I hope I'm being clear. I deal with some incredibly powerful human beings who are still so afraid of rejection or what other people might think and guys, that's 90% of us, right? 90% of us still battle with the fear of rejection. It's human nature. And we do battle, we do resist what we think other people are going to think. But what that does do, though, is it puts a leash on the potential that we have. We have untapped reservoirs of potential, boundless reservoirs, right? And when we are too afraid of failing to try, it is the same. I come back to that same illustration. You're compromising on your future self. You're compromising on your Eunice, and it's like chipping away at a little part of yourself every time. And when you do that enough times, you become apathetic. I'm at the top of my game. I don't need to push anymore. We sit in all of these excuses, but I'm comfortable. I don't need to do X, Y, Z. Look at I'm performing. And we make it okay not to step into greatness, not to step into that, the vastness of untapped potential that could manifest in incredible ways, but we are too afraid of what that even means to go after it. And so the only way to take control, to combat negativity, to combat the fear of failure in any situation, whether you find yourself where I was, with a life unrecognizable and completely contrary to my integrity, and just so convicted that something needed to change and I wanted more, or whether you're at the top of your game, but you have this lingering sense that there is something more and you're just missing something in life. The key to moving from any one of those spaces to your next level is to take control of your thinking. It's always going to be to take control of your thinking, because the world is created in the mind first. The world is absolutely created in the mind first, and then it is through a process manifest in the world, well, in the physical environment. And it's not existential. It's not. It's not, right? It's not overly spiritual, and it's not existential. You are what you think. You are what you think about. You become who you say you are. You become who you think you are. Your life reflects the quality of your thinking. It always will. It absolutely will. It's not a negotiable. It's not a negotiable. And then I see these incredible goals where people want to achieve amazing things, but there is no mindset goal. There is no thought to taking control of the inner world to become the person that will go after those goals consistently and with gusto. And we are not what we feel. We are not the environment we find ourselves in. We are not who other people say we are. We are manifestations of the choices we make, and the choices we make are birthed from how we think and where we want to go and what it will take for us to get to a certain place. You want to be a runner? That's great. Go listen to Atomic Habits. You can start to become a runner. But I guarantee you, unless you think you are a runner, an embodied runner will never manifest in your life. You want to write a book? It's great. Unless you really see yourself as an author or a wordsmith, it's never going to happen. Okay, it all starts with what we think about. If you're not 100% okay with who you are because your behavior or your environment or your life doesn't reflect, there's a disconnect in that integrity, right? It's because when you think what you think about, what you say and what you do, when that is in alignment, that's integrity. So when you have this version that you know you should be, but your life isn't manifesting that, the only way you start to change that is through choice. To sit and think about who I'd like to be and what characteristics that person embodies and how they engage with the world, how they engage with themselves. When you map that out, and you start to meditate on it and reflect on it and pray through it, slowly but surely, your life will start to reflect what your thoughts have already declared. And so the caveat though there is that when we are going through negative times, we've got to be very aware of what we're saying, because sometimes those narratives can be quite hard, guys. And it's so hard in those times to think your way out of a bad situation, right? I mean, we've all suffered a version of the Eeyore or a version of, the sadness and all that kind of stuff. I don't think there's a human experience of life that hasn't had a pit experience or a dark experience, right? What I have found works for me to combat that is I actively practice gratitude. So I do daily written reflection and gratitude. And when there have been moments of incredible joy or love or peace or blessing in my life or words of encouragement, I physically go and write that down. And I've taught my daughter to go and write that down. And we put it in a little miracle jar. That miracle jar helps us celebrate what God has done in our lives for the year and those beautiful magical moments that we really appreciate. It's our gratitude jar. It's like everything we're grateful for when we've had extreme divine intervention and blessing. It all goes in there. But what happened last year is I went through a bit of an Eeyore moment, and being a single mom and running your own business is not a joke. And sometimes I'm human too. I stress about provision and I stress about protection and all of that kind of stuff. And I had access to that gratitude jar. I had access to that miracle jar. And I could sit down and I could produce evidence that I'm going to be okay, that I am protected and I am provided for, and that my responsibility is to control my narrative. My responsibility is to control those inputs, and the outputs will be taken care of by my Father in heaven. And so if you are someone that is prone to spiraling, to anxiety, to stressing about that stuff, one of the cool mechanisms or levers I can share with you is to document things that you're grateful for every day. And those moments where you just feel deeply blessed or deeply privileged, or when a friend texts you, write down that word of encouragement and put it in this miracle jar or in this gratitude jar. Because when it's good, guys, but we know that when it's bad, it's horrific. And then when it's horrific and you can't think your way into a better space and you're stuck, you have access to something that's real, true testimony in your life of where things have been good. Because the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And when you have a jar full of evidence that it's going to be okay, man, it was probably one of the best antidotes that I had to battling anxiety and bouts of depression last year. And again, it all comes down to being so intentional about our mindset. What are we focusing on? What are we going after? Great organizational cultures are founded on the culture of celebration and gratitude, celebrating each other, celebrating wins, and being grateful for the moment, for the feast, so that in the moments of famine, unity has been formed. And I just think that You know, the Bible, if you're a non-believer, is still a collection of incredible wisdom that has stood the test of time for 2,000 plus years. And if something is that true, that it will transcend so many natural disasters, and it'll stand the test of time through so many years and so many civilizations and all, if that truth is true enough to make it, then even if you're not a believer, there might be wisdom in how to live life and live life to the full in those texts. For me, one of the things that I'm most passionate about is personal development and growth and seeking revelation. And I truly believe it is that deliberateness and that purposeful pursuit of truth and transformation that has led me through the darkest times and has, over the last couple of years, just exponentially and supernaturally created a life that is worth living, and a life that can ultimately, create a space to allow blessing to flow from for others. This has not been my story forever. This is a story that I have contended through on my knees with God, and through purposeful development. I read all the time. I mean, personal development, guys, taking control of your thinking. A lot of us don't have access to incredible mentors. But when you read and seek wisdom, you're sitting at the feet of the greats, right? An FBI negotiator taught me how to negotiate. A leader of a global church taught me about culture. The number one restaurateur in the world taught me about customer experience. I sat at their feet. The creator of the universe taught me about right living and about love. The you that is you today is not, if you don't like the you that is you today, is not fixed and immovable. You get to choose who you want to be. And then you get to choose to contend to become that person that you know you could be. But it means taking fearless control of the way that you think and how you talk about what you think about, how you think about it, and how you talk to yourself. Those three things, if you start to contend for making sure it's life-giving and it's on purpose and that you're taking control of your thought world, I guarantee you 31st of December 2025 is going to be very, very different than anything you've ever experienced in your life. My mission this year is to help executive teams, individuals, and organizations take control of how they are thinking and what they're thinking about and how they think about what they're thinking. Because I believe that after all I've done in terms of training, development, coaching, skills, I believe that the caveat and the catalyst to change is taking control of how we think and what we think about. I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing those fearless lives unlock. Until next week, guys. Bye.